Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the MarkeTech Group's very special discussion about direct-to-consumer advertising in the field of medical devices. I'm Robert Ensrink, a partner and senior consultant to the MarkeTech Group, specialist in medical technology marketing research and strategy consulting. We're very fortunate to welcome Dr. Robert Thornberry of the Tallahassee Orthopedic Clinic to our discussion today. Dr. Thornberry is the current president of the International Society for Computer Assisted Orthopaedic Surgery, and in addition to his clinical practice, Dr. Thornberry is managing director of Thornberry Technologies, bringing NASA technology down to earth for medical applications in the operating room. Welcome, Dr. Thornberry.
Glad to be here, Robert.
So many of our guests have submitted questions to the MarkeTech Group prior to today's roundtable, and we've incorporated these into the discussion where possible. Also, as you hear thought-provoking comments from Dr. Thornberry, we encourage you to text questions into the GoToWebinar chat box, and we'll address as many of them as we can during today's discussion with Dr. Thornberry. So with respect for everyone's time, let's get started. First, medical device advertising is different from drug advertising, of course. The FDA has an extensive regulation that sets out requirements and prohibitions for drug advertising, but there's a void of FDA guidance to guide medical device advertising. In 2004, FDA put out a draft guidance document to address advertising of restricted devices, and it was withdrawn last year, and manufacturers are left only with labeling guidelines, Federal Trade Commission laws, and they have to track individual warning letters to regulate their advertising strategies. So as a result, companies and doctors and hospitals have been refining their advertising practices by borrowing effective strategies from consumer industries and applying these to medical devices through experimentation and trial and error. So Dr. Thornberry, like all orthopedic surgeons, you've experienced the impact of direct-to-consumer advertising to patients. And briefly, can you give a quick background on what your hospital does for advertising?
Well, we have kind of a unique environment. I live in Tallahassee. We have two hospitals here, at Tallahassee Community Hospital, that's an HCA hospital, and Tallahassee Memorial, which is our larger not-for-profit hospital. The two of them do a little marketing hospital wars against each other, but it's not totally a fair fight because the Tallahassee Memorial Hospital has 80% market share. So the HCA hospital lands a blow every now and then with marketing, but doesn't really do that well. They've done well with their wait times in the ER, but that's about all. The other things in town are a little bit unusual because my practice makes up 95% of all the orthopedics in town. So if we do marketing as ourselves, we're marketing against ourselves, which is kind of an unusual environment.
Interesting. So what has your hospital done in that respect to bring in more patients, increase volume, and what do you do personally?
We have educational seminars. Our Capital Regional Hospital does it, and I've done ones for them. They advertise it in the newspaper, and they have lunch with the doctor, and we will come in and discuss various problems. My hip hurts is one of the topics that was used, especially for our hip arthroscopy partners that are interested in finding patients for hip arthroscopy. I had one on Birmingham. I had one on hip replacements because of all of the press on Sokolov trying to find the metal on metal, don't get a DePuy hip stuff, just to help bring patients up to date. And then the hospital also does some background web kind of advertising that's kind of stealthy, where your name pops up in search engines and things like that.
I understand. And what have you done of that advertising? What of that has been collaborative with manufacturers, if any?
I'm doing one right now with Conformis, which is a custom-made total knee arthroplasty. We're kind of looking at that particular market share. It's been very effective in the Atlanta market, and it's not been effective for us. My hospital did. We put on actually television advertisement on Fox News here locally, but I have yet to see the first patient say they saw me on Fox News and came in to be scheduled for this type of a knee replacement. We're now, I guess I have to pay $500. The last thing I looked at, I get for $500 a month. There's some people who are going to go on the web and give me a bigger web presence to draw this in, and conformist, the company that manufactures the implant, is offered to pay half of the cost.
Yeah, and what's the regional impact been? You described the unique environment where you are, but what's the regional impact been of this direct-to-consumer advertising?
It's been very little in our particular market, but it's you know, the only problem I have is the national marketing campaigns that do specifically for me. It's the national get around knee, you know, or some other product that is just sort of saturated into a national saturation marketing campaign. We also had the 30-year knee from Smith Nephew, which I do the Smith Nephew product, so it wasn't a problem for me to do the quote 30-year knee. But I don't use the Stryker products to give them a get around knee, and I suppose I've lost some patients because of that. But it's kind of funny to have patients come in and demand a particular implant design that has never been shown to be superior, and because of watching an egg roll down a bowling alley or something like that. It's that's a little bit strange, and it's very non-scientific, and it's that I don't like. Okay, if they have proof that they're better, we'd love to see it, but just to come up with some slick marketing smoke and mirrors is very difficult, and I spend a lot of time explaining to them that the get-around knee has not been proven to be one bit better than any other knee. And yes, they have a very neat advertising campaign having people ride on a bicycle in a funny way, but that's not really how your knee works.
Yeah, I understand. So when you talk to your colleagues, have you heard about impacts in areas outside of Tallahassee, maybe some of the large urban areas where there's a lot of competition, for example?
Yeah, Dr. Liebengood, I just spoke with him. We just had, you have me down as president. I'm the immediate past president. As of last week, it has been passed on. We had our big meeting last week, and I invited Dr. Liebengood from Atlanta, who has done 300 to 400 of these custom total knees, and his marketing campaign that he's done with his hospital has been outstanding. He's doubled the number of joint replacements he's done, and in the Atlanta market, this has taken off very well when it's a market that, you know, is very competitive, and they're used to seeing a lot of this type of advertising. I don't know whether Tallahassee is kind of funny because it doesn't see a lot of this on a local level. Just when I go to, like, are you still there?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good. Your picture just went away. It's on I go to Jacksonville, and I hear this all the time, just on the TV, one after another, of each of these hospitals marketing back and forth. In Tallahassee, we don't spend as much of our funds on marketing campaigns as practices, as hospitals, as we see in other communities. Yeah. It's just because we have such great word-of-mouth advertising that it's proven to be more effective for us. Our best marketing is we put our name on the T-shirts of every kid that plays in all of the Little League soccer games, all of the Little League softball games, and that's been our best marketing.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot of community outreach and support.
Yeah. So and that's what we do. We pay for the trainers in all the local high schools and all of the. We have a big sports medicine presence in the area, and so we actually budget from our standpoint, and we call it as our marketing budget. We spend over $100,000 seeing that each one of the local football games has a licensed physical therapist or someone that we pay to go to every single high school game to make sure that they get quality care on the sidelines.
Terrific. So it sounds like you tailor your advertising, because that is a form of advertising, to the type of market you're in. If you're in a very competitive urban environment, you're going to approach this differently than you do in your environment, where the community is very cohesive, and your word of mouth and community involvement has a bigger impact.
And also because we are the only real game in town. In other words, when you pick up the phone, we have 23 doctors in our group. There are 2 other orthopedic surgeons other than us.
Yeah.
In the community, and we have 23 in our group. It's not really you know, you can only gain so much marketing against these 2 people.
Right, right. So you talked about national campaigns, and just want to review briefly some of the history. You know, of course, campaigns have been around for a long time, national campaigns, and advertising has been around since people advertised heroin and healthy cigars. However, for orthopedic implants, it's really quite new, and it's really only been 10 years since Stryker used Jack Nicklaus to promote their ceramic-on-ceramic hip in 2003. And since then, we've had national campaigns where Mary Lou Retton tells us that Biomet changed her life. Stryker suggests that if a website visitor is suffering from hip pain, they should investigate the mobile-bearing hip replacement because, after all, Johnny Bench did. So the corporate spokespeople have continued, and Smith and Nephew made the unfortunate choice to work with Tour de France champion and hip resurfacing recipient Floyd Landis as a BHR spokesperson briefly before his doping admission. And Conformist promotes the use of patient-specific total knees. Mako promotes the benefit of robotic surgical techniques, and Zimmer tells arthritis sufferers they can benefit from a gender-specific implant design. Well,
that one is my favorite. That's my favorite one.
Tell us about that.
Well, the gender-specific is the ultimate in fantasy over factuality. There are slight differences between men and women in terms of their knees, but the knees, there's more women than men that get these things anyway. So the knees were always made for women to begin with, and so, but women are the ones that demand it because they all think they're getting a woman's knee. Okay, so it's one of those crazy things when you look at the sizes, and many people have looked at this. They were well cared for before the gender knee or after, but it really had a dramatic impact. And I've never put one of the gender knees in, but one of my partners, was getting more business because of this. I'm going, you got to be kidding me, Yeah, it was a great one. Mohammed Malfous is the one who did the work at the University of Tennessee, who's a friend of mine that put all of this stuff together and ran the statistical atlas of all the different knees to create this marketing genius. And so to me it is marketing genius, but it is no reflection. It has never been proven to be better in any way. And everybody else who's looked at the sizes show that they fit just fine, but it was all marketing, absolutely no science. Well, I can't say they did do this series of the statistical atlases, but no real outcome science.
Yeah. Interesting. So you bring up an interesting point, because after all, patients are getting all this information, they're getting all this guidance, and they can't, with only 2 knees and 2 hips, they can't possibly take advantage of all that sage advice being presented to them. So do you think that there are particular types of products or technologies that you believe are maybe most appropriate for direct-to-consumer advertising?
Oh, gosh, that's a good question. I think Conformist has been pretty straightforward, and I've participated in the Conformist campaigns. It is a custom total knee. That's very, very different than the custom cutting block stuff. So I think that that's good. I try and look here, Mary Lou Retton, Biomet changed my life. I mean, that's a true statement for her. She's a paid person to say that, just like people who sell everything else. I talked to Jack Nicklaus after he got his hip. He wasn't that happy with it. They pulled this pretty quickly because he had to have his hip revised. But if the spokesperson teaches people, okay, something about it rather than just be a strict marketing, I can see some positive out of it. But if it's just a marketing gimmick, like the gender knee or something like that, I have very little patience for. I mean, I can appreciate the marketing, but it doesn't improve my patient's care. And I guess I can tolerate it if it does something to improve patient care. And people that needed a knee replacement now recognize it's available, and so now they're going to go in and get it fixed, and they're going to have a better quality of life.
Right. Are there technologies that you think don't lend themselves or are inappropriate for direct-to-consumer advertising?
Some of it's the deceitful marketing, I guess, would be my thing. The marketing that really isn't true. Mm-hmm. And you put a bunch of examples in here that you sent to me. Snap, Crackle, Pop. If that wasn't your cereal, see us. The orthopedic group in Springfield. you know, everybody's need that's over age 50 goes snap, crackle, pop. I mean, you just kind of go, I kind of go, that's okay to just be funny, but it's not, I'm not sure that really is helping anybody. I'm trying, a partial knee replacement may be all you need from Biomet. I guess that teaches them something. The best way I look at it is when you watch TV and you get the chiropractic ads that come on TV that talk about how they can solve all the problems. To me, those are generally fairly deceitful advertising. There's lots of them, unfortunately, like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. In 2008, I believe, when at the time CDRH director Daniel Schultz presented to Congress, he said, and a direct quote, he said, DTC advertising can encourage consumers to seek information from their physician about an illness, condition, or medical product, and helping all Americans make better informed decisions concerning their health care is a priority of the agency. How well does direct-to-consumer advertising really inform patients? You know, and in what way does it benefit the patients? You said sometimes it's helpful, some is not.
I think it lets them know of a procedure that they didn't know was available. Then I can see that it offers something. It's some sort of educational. There needs to be an educational component to it. Mm-hmm. And I see that lacking in most of the ones. And I understand they've got 30 seconds to get their message across, and they have to say Stryker as many times as they can in 30 seconds. It doesn't leave a whole lot more time for them to teach the patient who's watching this anything. It's just a hard sell, and the inability to present actually valid information and just smoke and mirrors. Those are the only things that really upset me.
Yeah. So, for example, Zimmer has their Arthritis For One, an iPad app through the iTunes App Store. This is a form of advertisement that's also instructive for the patients. What are your thoughts on things like this?
Yeah, no, that'd be fine. I don't have that, and especially if they put down at the bottom, this is presented to you by Zimmer for your personal information and whatever, and look at Zimmer for total knees. Mm-hmm. You know, to me, that's palatable because they've taught them something about arthritis. Then they get a chance to learn when do they really need a knee replacement. I got no problem if they want to expend some of their capital on teaching patients and then and say, oh, by the way, we sell knee replacements.
Yeah. Now, they present this as a patient education resource for people who suffer from osteoarthritis, and they say this Arthritis 411 can be used at home to learn about arthritis pain, treatment options, and then they specifically say, even before consulting with a medical professional. Is that the appropriate message?
I would not use that message. I would probably say that, gosh, I don't know, even before. I don't want to try and force everybody that has arthritis to come in and be seen or something like that, but I think there's a better way to word that than the even before. Either with or without the assistance of your professional, then a professional would be probably that, you know, some of these ideas will work even if you haven't seen a doctor about it yet, but not this is to be done before, which is kind of how I hear those words leaning that, you know, you need to do this before you see your doctor. So I would say either way, you can either try some of these things even if you haven't seen your doctor yet. Is probably okay.
Yeah.
But
so it sounds
I love the way that's worded.
Yeah. So it sounds like instructive information that's truly educational and encourages interaction with a physician is most helpful.
Yeah, and doesn't force them down an avenue of treatment that is to that individual's complete and total individual benefit, like the get-around knee, where it says basically, if you need a knee replacement, you must get a get-around knee. Go contact your doctor right now about it. Yeah. And yes, that's educating them about when they need a knee replacement, and it's educating, but it's basically tell them that they must get their get-around knee and contact us, and we'll show you the doctor that can do the better knee replacement instead of the bad one.
Yeah.
That's not educational in my standpoint. I don't know whether they get more market share with that, but that's that's not helpful to me as a surgeon trying to take care of patients.
Got it. So when you think about these things we've been discussing, what's been your most positive experience with direct-to-consumer advertising? Maybe the top 3 positive impacts that you've seen from current direct-to-consumer advertising practices.
Gosh, I'm trying to look at some of these. The healthy cigars, no, that's not it. No. You know, the Birmingham hip wasn't bad for Frank Landis. I mean, and when I look at that in terms of that hip was specifically designed for heavy activity, and, you know, pretend he didn't do the doping or anything like that. I think that showed people that they could get a hip replacement. It taught them you could get a hip replacement and still remain very active. So I'd say there was some educational benefit behind that. Now, they still were trying to sell the Birmingham hip, yes, but I think there are a bunch of people that were able to identify him as a highly active person. So I thought that was good. Gosh, and I'm trying to. I don't mind the Zimmer Arthritis For One. I think that one's not bad. Gosh, there have been so many of them that are in so many areas because they're also in drugs, because we see drugs more than we see anything else.
Right.
But just in orthopedic implants, to me, we still have a limited number. It's, you know, the Biomet will do the Mary Lou Retton, Stryker did the other one. Implants are just not that often on the direct-to-consumer, other than just an occasional ad somewhere.
Right.
If you're talking about practices, individual physicians' practices, some of those are very deceitful as well. And as long as they're not deceitful, they're fine.
Yeah. So speaking of that, in speaking with your colleagues, how many of them have found that they can use direct-to-consumer advertising to increase their own case volume or the hospital's occupancy or revenue?
Like I say, in our market, because we have near 100% market share, we haven't been able to increase our volume using direct-to-consumer in our particular marketplace, although it has worked in a lot of other markets. We start up as our practice as a philosophy that we were going to take care of people in our market. We were going to try and steal from, say, Jacksonville or Pensacola or other places and try to set up a regional center. We were going to take care of our people so well that they wouldn't want to leave town, and we've been very successful in doing that. And we do some limited marketing, but we get a record of everybody that's in our area that gets the total joint replacements, let's say, anywhere else in the United States of America. So we keep track on that, and we still 95% of those particular patients are all done inside our community. And so we pretty much cover our bases.
Yeah. Now, what about other
opportunities? Not much more you can get out of that.
Now, what about other opportunities? If the educational component and the outreach component is effective, does it help with your efficiency, whether it's in the clinic and informing patients or in the hospital, so that patients are better informed and you have to spend less time teaching them or in post-op follow-up?
No, actually, the more informed the patient is, the longer it is to talk to them about their surgery, and which is good that they're more informed. But as far as saving time, absolutely not. You know, I had a patient I just scheduled for a knee replacement before I came on this call, and she had already figured out the block and all the other things and nerve blocks and everything else about it. And so she asked me every question about every single aspect. I almost didn't get to the phone. You know, get here to talk to you, because she spent 35 minutes explaining to me everything she knew about a knee replacement because she'd been studying it for 3 months. No, so they do not go shorter. Now, it's wonderful that she's well informed, but this is a time expense to me as a clinician, having them explain to me everything they know.
Yeah.
And,
so
I wish I could say that was a positive.
Yeah, I understand. So another example, sometimes advertising direct-to-consumer is used to recruit for clinical studies. What are your thoughts on that?
That's been done well. I've got some guys at OBGYN that have done that very well, and I would have no objection to that at all if they're trying to do a reasonable clinical study. Some of them that are pretend clinical studies just to get patients in, maybe not so much. You know, it depends on what phase you are on your clinical trials, but those trials need to be done. You need to get a broad spectrum of patients in them to make them valid, I don't have any problems with that.
Yeah.
That's reasonable for recruiting patients. Patients know exactly what they're getting into. They're being part of a, recruitment for a type of study. And it's easier because it's hard sometimes to get patients to participate in studies just walking in off the street, because they go, no, I just want you to do what's best. And these other people understand that you're going to do a trial of a couple of different products, and they're okay with that. And they come in knowing that. And they usually get reduced fees as well, which they all like.
Sure. So you talked about some of the negative impacts. It can be a time suck, especially with well-informed patients. So if the intention of the advertising is good and manufacturers take your advice to be instructive and educational, are there negative consequences that these advertisers should consider?
I think there's downsides when it doesn't turn out right. Okay, in other words, if you do some marketing, for instance, let's say, like for instance, and I don't think some of the other companies really went to it, when Jack Nicklaus got his Stryker hip replacement that had to be revised. That was a marketing tool used against them, because when you went to the academy and they said, oh, Jack Nicklaus's hip, he says, yeah, that's already been revised once in the first 2 years. And it was painful since he first got it. You got to be a little bit careful with these, when you do this type of marketing. If anything goes wrong, or Mary Lou Retton all of a sudden has a dislocation or something like that, it doesn't always work. I guess so. You could look at Frank Landis with his blood doping. That was a negative. So you got to understand, when you hang your hat on these personalities and testimonials, that as long as the person remains popular, there was a time you wouldn't want Tiger Woods on your direct-to-consumer marketing.
Right. Yeah. So are there challenges for you as a physician when patients come in and say, I really want this particular knee, or I've seen this ad, or I want this technology, to train and get adequate experience to perform all these promoted procedures?
I just don't do them. And quite frankly, I don't have a single patient that has come to my practice asking for the get-around knee.
Yeah.
Once they've come in and seen me and they've met me and I told them I don't do the get-around knee, I don't personally know of any of them that refuse to have their surgery done. So I think the patients come into the doctor, and it's the same thing I tell them. You want the doctor to use whatever product he's best with in his hands, not what they sell on TV. Yeah. Most patients understand that, so I don't think they get that as big a balance out of that.
Yeah. We have a couple questions from the audience that apply to this. One question is, what types of products or brands do patients most commonly request? You mentioned the get-around knee and the gender-specific products. So these are specifically implants that patients come in and request. Is that what they come in and ask for, or are they asking for a technology, or the spokesperson, or a particular brand, or a hospital or physician?
The most common thing that I get that they come in asking for is that rooster comb stuff, to be injected in their knee, as far as the drug, whether you call it Synovisc or whatever. That's the single most common thing that I get that is incredibly marketed and misrepresented. And it's in a drug. It's not a device, but it shows the same thing. Certain people have actually taken it off their list as a covered service because it doesn't prove sufficient efficacy. When you have moderate to severe osteoarthritis, it only works 15% over placebo. It's not a great drug, but everybody who needs a knee replacement thinks they got to have it. This is it. If I just got this, I heard some guy somewhere that got this stuff and now he's fine. And it just, the hype is too much. So I get asked for that the most. The get-around knee probably second. The gender-specific is not. They haven't pushed it as much lately, so I don't get the gender-specific, where it used to be probably number 2 on the list. Everybody wants that brace that takes all their pain away. They just don't know the name of it, but they've heard about it, that there's a brace. If I just really knew well enough, I could give them the brace that would take their knee to pain, and they wouldn't need a knee replacement. They wouldn't need anything.
So patients are receptive to what seems like unrealistic expectations.
Absolutely, and I guess that would be a good way to look at this. When you look at direct-to-consumer marketing, if you create unrealistic expectation, it is a gargantuan headache for us when they end up showing up in your doctor's office, because they already saw on TV that they can get unreasonable expectations. It's already been proven to them, and you're just a jerk that won't give it to them.
Mm-hmm. How do you handle that?
I get angry, and I look forward to an opportunity to tell the people that are listening today to stop doing this. You know,
Yeah.
Make it realistic, because we have to live with the results, and it's, you know, it doesn't always turn out as wonderful as they want. And I know they've got to push product at all costs, but you also have to do it somewhat responsibly, so we don't mislead patients and don't put us on the front lines having to justify why their product was not as good as they told them it was.
Yeah. Interesting. In fact, you just answered one of the other questions from our audience, asking how do you handle this when what do you tell patients when they come to you requesting a specific device or implant that you typically don't use? Would you send them to someone else that does use it? Would you look into using that product and becoming trained on it?
I've done both. If they have a product or a procedure, and one of the nice things we have 23 guys in our group, so I've got a guy inside my own practice that will generally do just about anything. And so I've got, if they want a biomet knee, or they want, some other kind of then that's fine. I can get somebody who'll put in a biomet knee, or I got somebody who'll put in a striker knee, or somebody who'll put in a gender-specific knee.
Yeah.
So we have people that are willing to do that. I don't, and so I've not had much of a problem with it, but if they really insist, we'll do that.
Yeah. Interesting. So we talked a little bit about the modalities. Orthopedic manufacturers, hospitals, and physicians use multiple advertising channels. They use print advertising, billboards. There's your Snap, Crackle, Pop billboard. Broadcast media like TV and radio. You talked about in-person educational seminars that seem to be quite effective in your practice. And then, of course, there's the Internet. Now, you mentioned that most of your patients get information on the Internet. What's your best guess of what % of patients refer to the web?
It's getting to be more and more, and that's why I'm about ready. When I look at what I'm going to do differently, I'm going to develop a much stronger web presence. And as a practitioner, I think that's real critical.
Mm-hmm.
And I have not done that as well as I need to. I had enough word-of-mouth advertising in town to keep me very busy. But as I've gotten older, I'm now in my early 60s, the guys that referred to me are now retired, so I don't get quite as much as I did, so I've got to go kind of direct-to-consumer as well and develop a better web presence so that I have patients seeking me out off of the web. So, and you same thing. If you look at the websites for most physicians are not as blatant advertisers as what industry is, other than some of our anterior hip guys go way over the top in terms of saying that their anterior hip is the greatest thing ever, and there's not been any proof that the anterior hip's any better than the other, but I swear to God, to these guys, it's like, they've created this monster.
Yeah. Now, it seems like in your area, you have a preference for the local marketing. And we have a question from the audience that asks, since local marketing is your preference, what can manufacturers provide to you to help support your local marketing efforts, you, your hospital, and your colleagues?
I think some good educational things. I think that in terms of marketing, that's probably the best. The educational handouts on arthritis, I would welcome that from some of the manufacturers. I don't know, we're in this new world. You can't accept anything. I can't get a pen from anybody, so I don't know what the manufacturers can do because I'm not supposed to accept anything of any value. And we've gone very rigid on that in our practice. Nobody can buy us a sandwich, a Coke, anything from any vendor whatsoever. So does that include educational material? For instance, when you do one of the local presentations to educate patients about their options for their knee pain, for example. Yeah, I've used the Conformist has given me the videos and the stuff to be able to give those talks, so I've gotten those talks for them. I'm not running up to flagpole in any of our committees whether that's considered something of value. I've done it. You know, I think we get a little crazy about, you know, we're all here to help patients. If they provide us some sort of brochure that allows us to help teach patients, I think I can get that through our ethics committee inside our practice. So I guess that would be probably it. You need to get through each individual practice's ethics committee that you are not being bought, that you are not, you know, receiving things of value, something like that. Each of us is also allowed to go on their websites from in terms of local marketing and say that I do Stryker products. So they say find a surgeon for your get around knee, you know, click, 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 find a surgeon. I'm on a couple of those sites where if they have a particular product that I put in, I put myself on the sites, and I do get patients from those. And that direct-to-consumer marketing is, you know, it's not something I can control, and it's been acceptable. Some of my partners go on every site, so they're on Zimmer, Stryker, Biomet, you know, doing every one of the procedures on every single site. I don't know whether that proves to be effective for them or not.
Yeah. Terrific. So when you look at this and we try to summarize a little bit, and considering serving the needs of all the stakeholders, how can manufacturers best satisfy the physician and hospital needs through direct-to-consumer advertising? Is there specific content or specific messaging?
To me, I would like to see the direct-to-consumer, and I think we did get some of that from Smith Nephew where they sent it to the physician before it went out. I think it's nice if we know what's coming out, we can comment on it. So I think getting some feedback from some different physicians and say, you know, this is pretty misleading, probably shouldn't do this, or, yeah, this makes great sense, this educational content is good. I guess I look at it from that way, just so we don't have all of these messes that sometimes are created. The direct-to-consumer, we're pretty much cut out of this. You're just going to move product, and the doctor isn't a part of it. I like being a part of the choices. I like them to be able to prove to me that their product is better, and then I can recommend it.
Yeah.
You and I talked about this product called Exparil, put out by Pacira.
Yes.
They're going out and they're doing word-of-mouth marketing, and they're out there bringing in physicians and teaching them about their product, and it's going off like hotcakes. It's just selling like crazy because it's a good product, and they're selling it through physicians to be used on their patients. I guess I'd like to go back to where we get marketed as opposed to all of our patients, and we get marketed with truthful advertising. That would be nice. But I understand we're in a different world now.
Yeah. So what is it that Pacira is doing well?
It has a good product. It interacts very positively with physicians, and all the physicians leave having a very high opinion of Pacira and of their product. Or not all of them. I mean, it's the ones that find use for it in their practice. I found it very useful in my practice. It's making a substantial difference for my patients every day. So I really like it because it has proven value. And that's the whole point on all this. If we're just changing and marketing a gender-specific knee and packaging it a little bit different and smoke and mirrors, there's no real value that I see there.
Yeah.
This Pacira comes out with a product that has great value, and they market it to the physicians. They don't take out full-page ads in their newspaper, forcing me to use it on my patients. They've actually taught me about it so that I'm comfortable prescribing it for my patients.
Interesting. So there's a couple key things I'm hearing here. One is you like the informative educational material, preferably directed to the physicians than patients. And we have a couple questions here that I'd like to address. One is, how much has direct-to-consumer advertising impacted the type of device or implant you use? Where you mentioned a couple where patients come to you and you prefer to refer them to a physician who already uses that. but it sounds like there may have been some situations where some things induced you to make a shift or to consider a shift.
You and I both know from being in the orthopedic industry that the average orthopedic surgeon changes his product that he uses in terms of this for knee replacement, hip replacement, about 1% change each year.
Mm-hmm.
I do not find direct-to-consumer advertising does anything to make any surgeon change his practice whatsoever. You may force him to put in a knee that he doesn't want to, but I don't see people changing and putting in and switching and say take and move 5% in any one year to any one thing or another.
Yeah.
I've got one of my partners who puts in all kinds of different, and it drives me crazy to try and learn all new implant systems every week, and he still does it, but he's a very rare bird.
Yeah.
But from the industry standpoint, they're not getting any bang for their buck. They only get a real bang when the surgeon changes and moves all his business over to them. I do about $1 million worth of implants a year, and one time I did close to 2. You know, I'm the guy that they want because they can generate significant volume and income from the amount of work I can do. But to use direct-to-consumer marketing in order to drive me is not an effective strategy at all.
Yeah. Now, what about technologies? We have a question from the audience about OR robots, for example, robotic technologies. You know, how do you feel about technology marketing from a manufacturer versus implant advertising?
Well, Mako is the robot that's done the most marketing. Yeah.
And as the now past president of iCAOS, you're invested in those types of technologies.
Yeah, no, we had Bluebell Technologies has now got a robot. Mako's got a robot. There's a new spine robot. We had a 4th robot in that Mako sued and made go away. This technology is not quite ready yet, and so the problem with it that they don't tell you in all of this is the amount of time it takes specifically on robotics, because the burrs and stuff just can't eat the bone fast enough, and so you got to spend almost twice as much to do the procedure, and that's not told to any of the patients. Your operation is going to take twice as long because the burrs can't cut aggressively enough and still remain accurate enough and not burn your bone in order to do this in an efficient fashion, and the poor doctor that's stuck doing your surgery is going to have to only do half as many cases in a day because he's doing a robot. All of that goes into the mix when we have to make a decision what type of procedure we're going to do. So I think robotics is going to be the part of the answer moving forward, but it's just really in its infancy right now. It does some things incredibly well, but it's not going to be widely adopted simply because it takes too long, and we're getting paid less and less for every case. So I don't know if that answers your particular question about robotics. Just there's all these other things that are not included in their direct-to-consumer marketing when you actually try to do it as a surgeon.
Yeah. So it sounds like it goes back to your earlier comment that you want the material to be accurate and not put you as a physician in a position of having to re-educate a patient and correct their perceptions.
Yeah, and robotics specifically are going to be difficult. In Florida, we have like 50 robotic surgeons that are all put on the website. And when Mako sends you the material to buy a robot from them, they basically, the only way you can justify the $1 million for the robot is by stealing patients away from someone else who's going to come to you for robotic surgery, but you're not going to do robotic surgery. But are about 1 out of every 4 of them. And they basically say, because you've got now 3 non-robotic surgeries for every robot surgery, you're going to steal those patients away from somebody else that's going to justify you spending $1 million for the robot. And not a real reasonable business model. And it's not exactly truthful. These people are not all coming for robots. You're basically doing a marketing plan in order to take patients and bring them into your practice because you pretend to be a robotic surgeon. And all these people that are on the web as robotic surgeons, only about 1 in 3 actually do robotic surgery to any degree.
Yeah. How do you extrapolate that out to larger, more competitive markets?
I mean, I don't know how to extrapolate. I mean, it's like if you go on the web and you're a patient, you're looking everywhere, and you want to make sure your doctor's up on things. You want to make sure he's a robotic surgeon too, so he really knows what to do with it. Yeah. I don't know how to relate to that. We don't have a robot in town, and we're not buying one soon. If I did, I'd probably get the Bluebell one, just because it's a lot less expensive. But To me, we're still a ways away from it being mainstream.
Yeah. How useful do you think it is to be listed on these sites when a patient goes to investigate some technology they may have seen an ad for? How useful is it? How practical and how effective is it to be listed on these surgeon locators?
Yeah, I think it is, and it's like you're talking about the robotic. Like I say, that's why all these doctors have, out of defense, have put themselves all on this robot page, because the patients want to get robotic surgery, and so they come in to see, and then they look and see who goes to robot. Well, I've heard about Dr. Jones, but Dr. Jones, Dr. Smith, Dr. Wayne, they all use robots, so I can still go to Dr. Jones, whereas before, and there was only one or two guys that were robot doctors, and they would all go into that office. And so they've just done this to protect themselves.
Got it.
But they're not really using it because they're robot doctors. They're just doing it to protect it. We got Jacksonville. I got Mary O'Connor. To my knowledge, she's never even used a robot. And she's a great surgeon over in Jacksonville. And I don't think she does robotic surgery, but she's listed on Mako's website. Broderson, all the guys at the Mayo are all listed on the website as being Makoplasty doctors.
Yeah. So it's effective to establish your credibility as far as staying up on technology, even if you don't use the technology, as long as you've been genuinely trained and aware and educated on it.
Yeah, and the robot, I mean, the robot is, in terms of educated on it, basically it's a haptic system that won't let you screw up. It's not exactly, there's a lot of education involved. It's a robot.
Yeah, okay. So we're starting to get near the end of our time. I'd like to tackle one other question we have, which I think will help start to summarize what we've just been discussing. Someone asked, if you were in charge of marketing for a device or implant company, what tactics would you recommend they use to increase your market share? If you were say the VP of marketing for these companies, what would you invest in?
Gosh, you're talking to the guy who's just Mr. Technology here. And so what I would do is I would invest in technology, and then you need to invest in researching your technology and show that it has a proven medical benefit. And this is one of the problems. I know you and I both in our past worked with. Are we allowed to say who we used to work with?
Sure you can.
Yeah, with Smith Nephew. Okay, Smith Nephew had some incredibly innovative products, but did not do a good job of marketing them as well as I thought they could, and they did not do as good a job of showing the efficacy of some of their products. So if you're in marketing, you need to have a part that actually proves that your stuff works. Most surgeons want to know what they're doing is right. They don't want to be putting in something that's going to harm patients, and
yeah,
you've got to have that additional information. So I've seen over the years that they could get a thought leader to get on the podium and give these presentations to other doctors, and they do their direct consumer, all this other part. I still think proof, having a really good technology and proving it works. I think if you don't have a technology that's superior to somebody else, you just got to do whatever you can to sell the product. And unfortunately, that's what I see with most of these direct-to-consumers. They don't have a product that's better than anybody else's. They just got a Me Too, and they got to figure out how to make their Me Too sell better. And that's just smoke and mirrors.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, we're getting near the end of our time. And I'd like to summarize that although FDA believes, again quoting from what I found on FDA, that they believe that if done properly, medical device advertising can assist consumers in taking a proactive role in improving their health. They also state, however, to be of value, these advertisements must not be false or misleading, which really is in line with what you're saying, Dr. Thornberry. Now, from our discussion today, we've learned that one orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Thornberry, believes that, number one, advertising works. It creates awareness. You mentioned as examples that get around knee and gender-specific implants. Also, in a smaller, less competitive market, that word of mouth and community involvement may be most effective. And a key point that you came back to many times was that advertising should teach. It has to be truly instructive and truthful. And it should allow the physician, the orthopedic physician, to prescribe the best product, not to prescribe one solution as the best for all patients. And that messaging needs to be clear in the advertisements. You felt that in many cases, direct-to-consumer allows or tends to add to surgeon time. It doesn't save time. You said informed patients are often a time drain. And direct-to-consumer for clinical study recruitment, you said was effective. You also gave a caveat with using spokespersons that can backfire if the implant needs a revision or has a complication or some other issues like, Jack Nicklaus needed a revision. Floyd Landis, certainly his political capital and his effectiveness as a spokesperson was not improved when he was found guilty of doping. You said patients most commonly ask for less invasive treatments, that they're really looking for a less invasive cure, and can be misled into unrealistic expectations that makes things difficult for a physician. You mentioned the brace that takes pain away, and it puts you in a difficult situation of having to re-educate patients. So your guidance there was don't put out advertisements that create unrealistic expectations. Then a couple suggestions you had and requests you had was, number one, companies should inform physicians before they start an ad campaign in the area so that you know how to respond, or if it's something that you agree with and promote, that you're aware of it when patients come in and they'll start asking about it. Also, within the Department of Justice restrictions of not receiving items of value, you stated that physicians can use education materials to support local seminars, and that identification on company websites is helpful, those physician locators. And then your overall recommendation for companies was to invest their dollars in technology and then market its efficacy so that truly beneficial technologies are promoted, and technologies, products, techniques that truly help improve patient care are beneficial for patients, physicians, and will in the long run be best for the companies. Was there anything else, Dr. Thornberry, that we should add?
No, I think you covered it very well. That was a great summary.
I'm trying to take notes very carefully. Dr. Thornberry, thanks very much for your time. We really appreciate it. On behalf of the MarkeTech Group, we'd like to thank everyone for your participation. Thanks to all the attendees from across the country, and particularly we'd like to thank today's guest, Dr. Robert Thornberry. After the webinar, if y'all could take a moment to complete the survey. Remember, the MarkeTech Group is a medical technology marketing research firm, so we really do appreciate and thrive on your feedback. Good day, everyone, and thanks again, Dr. Thornberry.
All right. See you guys.